Heiner.
Hey man, you're looking wild.
I'm actually letting the dogs in, so that's why I'm not at my desk. I'm going back to my desk.
No
And then I will
rush.
turn off this session right here.
I'm also away.
Glenn.
Hello.
We've got Heiner, we've got Jaswinder, and I'm looking a little wild today. Let's see who else we've got here.
Yeah, I like your wild style. Is there any reason for it?
I'm a wildling from north of the wall. Okay, who we got here? Alex, Jaswinder. Let's see.
No.
It looks like my camera is making problems. So I feel I will stay in disguise.
Are you on a different machine, Hunter? You've normally been able to come on, no problem.
Well, I can go to various other machines, but I'm also in other cycles, and I just have this now on. But I'm happy to see you. I'm as wild as you, not going out much, hiding in the woods.
Yeah, I didn't shave this morning, okay? I just have one thing I want to accomplish today, and then I will feel like we have actually done something. I'll save that after check-ins, though. Hey, Alex. Hey, Josh. And there's Jaswinder. Okay, how you guys feeling this week?
Good.
A week older than last week.
Does it make a difference?
7 days have passed.
Okay.
It's a Thanksgiving holidays in America, isn't it? We don't really have that much of a tradition for it here, but I've been thinking about it this weekend. Things I'm thankful for, so I think that's a very good tradition.
I think they're barn racing to breed turkeys in America. Doug was the cook at the barn race at the Thanksgiving.
You know, okay, so I'll check in personally about that. Thanksgiving has never been as big a holiday for me as it seems to be for the rest of people in the U.S. Obviously, you know, it's not something that I grew up with as a child because I was born in Taiwan and then came over when I was 5. I think the whole tradition of regathering or reuniting with family is an awesome tradition. And that's what I like about it. This time, I wasn't so because of COVID, I and my kids got together on Zoom, not Zoom, Facebook Messenger, actually, on video. Because my son's in California, my daughter's in Seattle, my other daughter is upstairs. So we just decided to do it that way this time. So as far as regathering with family, reuniting with family, I think it's an awesome tradition. But as far as being thankful for the birth of this country, there's a lot about this country's history that is really just coming to light as just stuff that we should be learning from, and perhaps not celebrating quite so wildly. And so that part of it always bothers me, not just about this particular date, but also about what happens with other Native Americans on other dates, like Columbus Day, that sort of thing. That's what's got some energy inside me when it always comes to Thanksgiving. Over.
There's colonial invaders talking about the American being the country where there was local indigenous population of primitives, they called them, but they brought in their white rules and regulations to a population that was living peacefully, and they farmed the land and slaughtered millions of people. So it turned out that they were the ones that were primitive compared to what they were moving into.
Yeah,
that's all hidden. They bury that.
That's the part of it that bothers me. Yeah. Or to start on a downer note.
Well, I can check in here where I live. We don't really have any Thanksgiving tradition, but it's a very big tradition around Christmas time for meeting family and gathering together, and New Year's evening as well. It's often a big time for friends to gather together, but obviously it's going to be quite different this year. But I mean, I'm just here with my girlfriend and our cat, and it's, we just love this, taking it really quietly. All of these holidays, really. Her parents were here about a month ago, and that was nice. And my mother lives in Scotland, so we, talk on Zoom. But I actually got to visit her this summer, so it was like this brief interval where the restrictions were eased, and I actually was there for a couple of weeks. So that was nice. During the summer, it was pretty normal here. It felt like just a normal summer. It's been like COVID has been much more of a big deal right before summer and now, which we also have a lot more restrictions. But for me, I haven't really felt it that strongly because I've been working anyway, and yeah, we're not all that social. So apart from that, it's yeah, had a nice walk outside in the woods. It's actually really nice to go for a walk even on pretty cold days. I just noticed that's a sort of a mental thing, not to go too much for walks when it's cold, but it's actually really nice. Even, you just put on some nice clothes, you see the, frosty leaves, and it's very beautiful in a very different way from the rest of the year. So, and we got some great, areas around here. So, I mean, it's good to just be able to just go outside, even if it's just for an hour. I mean, to just be in nature is definitely something I'm very thankful for. So But yeah, I mean, I have actually thought a bit about yesterday what I'm thankful for, and I mean, it's a lot of things to be thankful for, even though it's sort of a crazy world, and but it's also, you know, so much awesomeness that's, you know, generally not acknowledged. And when you just ask that question, what am I thankful for? You know, it's there's so much that can be discovered. So I think I'll just
So,
let
so
that be
let
the
me
check.
jump. Oh, sorry.
Go for it, Timer. Yeah, I'm finished.
So let me just jump in. We don't have Thanksgiving. We have Ernte Dankfest, but that is in late autumn. And this is already winter. And here we have Santa Claus and other times. And the families come maybe for Christmas, but not before. So Santa Claus is December 6th. And so it is a calm time. I'm presently deep into indigeneity as an alternative worldview by the American Indians and the Maoris. They have a value space and a dynamic spiral space to relate reciprocity, distribution, relationship, and responsibility, but not more. I have to present about this tomorrow, so I'm not really with you, but I feel I should at least sometime check in as we are so close.
Holmes here. Anybody else would like to check in?
Yeah, I want to know if we're counting our curses. We should have a day opposite to Thanksgiving to counterbalance the situation.
Wait, I didn't quite get it. To count our curses? Is that what you said?
Well,
Yeah, I think
not count them, at least make sure they're not disregarded. They need to be on the list to counterbalance the blessings.
I don't know. I kind of feel that people do that too much already.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Okay, so let me ask my first question, unless people still want to check in. I'll give it 3 seconds. Okay, so I know in other conversations in GCC, check-ins are part of the practice. Do people feel that it's useful here? Does it actually serve a purpose for grounding us, for letting us arrive, for letting us become present? Or do people feel that it's not necessary? I'm kind of curious about that. Anybody feel one way or the other about this?
I think it's become a tradition in a sense, and people that like it use it. Maybe if it's not being used, we could drop it.
Because you notice, 3 or 4 people have not done it, and it's obviously an opt-in practice and opt-out practice. So some of us do it, some of us don't.
well, yeah, it's been a bit of a tradition here to have an optional check-in. I remember Neil Davidson once was here, and he said something about check-ins as very important to say why I'm here. And maybe that isn't something we've done in that kind of way, but that is also an option, of course, to sort of connect on a deeper level inside. Why am I here? What's my burning, reason for being here? But and that can certainly be a very grounding practice. Sometimes it's more of an informal thing, like, what have I been doing today or last week? So, but optional seems like a good way to go.
Would anybody like to check in? That seems to be the question. And then we proceed with the agenda to the topic on the agenda, the items, issues, the focusing issues.
I'm curious to hear from people who haven't checked in, how they feel about the check-in. There's Jaswinder.
It's the funny voice, Jaswinder.
Yeah, I think we're hearing you, but we're not understanding anything you're saying.
There's some kind of distortion of the sound.
You change your microphone.
Yeah, you sound like chipmunks today. If you're familiar with that cartoon. Yeah, still happening. Still happening. Do you happen to have another microphone? Yeah, I'm not understanding anything.
Sounds like Minnie Mouse on the wacko drugs.
Okay, Jaswinder, I guess, is going to try and rejoin. Anyway, just a few more seconds to see if Josh or Colin want to opine about check-ins. Josh has his hand raised.
Thank you. Yeah, I really like what Glenn just said, is if there's something burning and there's something that you would like to say, I believe an optional check-in does provide that opportunity. But today I don't really have anything except for I'm just here to listen to what your thing that you mentioned earlier after check-in. So I am quite burning to get check-ins over with to hear what it is that you want to get accomplished, Sam.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah,
Colin,
ditto,
you can speak
ditto.
up at any time. Other than that, I'm going to mention two items that I think could help focus us today. One is, I think Josh had proposed and we attempted 2 weeks ago to cover how Agile can be practiced here in barn raising. And I felt that we got probably about 2/3 of the way through, but didn't actually get through all of the notes that I had prepared regarding Agile. And I think that the takeaway that I heard Josh go with was, could Agile be practiced by as little as one person, by as few as one person? My answer to that, my own personal answer to that is yes, Agile can be practiced by single individuals. But there's a lot more to the way Agile can be practiced, especially within this group, that I think we haven't yet gotten to. So that's idea number one, is to continue along that conversation path. Idea number two is something much, much more focused, and I think actually could be done, but I wanted to bring it to the group. And that is the whole notion that has been surfacing every once in a while about how decisions or how practices actually get adopted in a group where membership is fluid and not strict. And of course, by no surprise, I'm referring to this, do the best you can. When you can do better, have a, process for improving things. And that's basically it. So I just wanted to present that as idea number two, because I think that is a huge enabler for everything else that can follow in barn raising, particularly, but potentially, wider as well. So those are the two things I came prepared with. There's a number of implications to each that I think can also be covered, but those are the first two that I think I would start as entry points. Let's see what you guys think about those. Or anything else that you guys would like to bring up that has been, let's say, topical or current or unresolved.
does that almost sound a little bit like the same thing, or the way you formulate it?
You mean those two topics
Agile.
could be one?
Yeah.
Actually not, they're different, but they are related in my mind.
For example, thinking if there's an agile process for decisions and practices.
Okay, so let me address that. Okay, I realize I'm ping-ponging here, but the reason I don't believe it is quite so directly related is because Agile actually knows who's on the team. In Agile, that is very important, that you actually know who's on the team and you know you've got a fixed set of things you're actually working towards or working on. So because I believe GCC is different, that we have a loose idea of who's on the team, but we don't really, because we don't know that I can count on myself for 8 hours or you for 2 hours or somebody else for 16 hours. We don't really have that kind of relationship. But that's why I think Agile needs to be adapted to what we're doing here. It can't just come over just as is, in my opinion. Over.
And do you think it would help if we had, if of us had a label, like on a ship, the crew has different designations?
Yeah, so I've been trying very hard for 3 years not to do that, okay? I do realize that perhaps we must, okay? But I've been trying to figure out whether actually we need those titles. Like, you know, you're the captain, you're the first mate, you're the chef, you're the, you know, whatever, okay? I've been really trying hard not to do that. But on some occasion, that can be quite an efficiency enhancer. It is very much something that we know how to do. And in the quote unquote old paradigm, we all kind of naturally gravitate towards that quite well, in my opinion.
If the guy making the sails isn't talking to the guy making the ropes, we could have issues.
That's another whole different conversation right there.
Okay, I'll jump in a little sort of retrospective here then, because that's the part of the agile process, isn't the retrospective? Because we did have a sequence where we did an experiment in focusing. So different people moderated different sessions, and in some of those sessions, people took specific roles, maybe not very much, but when I had my sessions, I remember I asked you, Sam, if you could write down notes in the chat, and you wrote down quite a few of those. And there was a document which was created eventually from that conversation, which has also been put into. I always forget what it's called. That app you just created. Yeah, I got it here. Yeah, here it is. Zulip. Yeah, in Zulip, and that was a pretty interesting document, I thought. But the funny thing was, I forgot to store the conversation. It was pretty stupid. So I haven't found the video. I don't know where it is. That should be pretty easy to solve. So that's obviously, you know, looking in retrospective, something that could be done a lot better. But I mean, that seemed to me like an example of a project that we did with some relatively specific roles, and some things came out of it. I thought it worked pretty well, and has promised to work a lot better. I would certainly love to continue down that path and try some more of that. That, you know, one person can present something, or just, you know, have a game or an activity or something they want to do for a specific session, and they sort of put out the rules, and then we just play along with it and see what happens. Still, you know, it's still fairly open-ended, but yeah, that certainly seems at least a little bit in the direction of agile principles.
So let me see if I understand you. So the experiment, which ran for 3 or 4 months, maybe even longer, where each of us took a session and moderated it and did the preparation and did the focusing and brought the topic, etc. So I do think that most people took the opportunity to do something with it. I'm hearing that you would like to have that practice extended and perhaps then cull from what was learned and create something.
Yeah, exactly. Build on it further. Yeah.
Because I agree with that. Okay. I think that the whole attempt was to try and do that. But where we actually collect any of these lessons is another whole question, because each of us has an opportunity to write up whatever we want to write up and put it wherever we want to put it. We don't have a group decision yet about where we put such things, which I think is actually okay. Okay. So whether or not we need a group, really, to me, okay, depends on who's actually creating content. Right now, very few people are actually creating content other than these videos. In my mind, there's actually not very much that's done to write up, what's happened in these sessions and to consider how this session on Saturday connects with that session 2 months ago, et cetera, et cetera. So there's not a lot of that going on, okay? I think that's natural, but I think that would be a nice next step. So I agree with it. And in fact, what we might do is, I would even propose something like, let's say every last Saturday of the month, we devote to one of these dives where one person, not me, takes it, moderates it, does the preparation, does the moderation, does the rules enforcement, does the visuals or does the audio or even does the post-processing. Like, how do you want to capture what was done? How do you want to share it? How do you want to, interpret it? How do you want to put your own spin on it? How do you want to invite other people to join in co-creation of it? Okay. I'm very open to that. And it can even be twice a month. I don't even care. So, if people really like that, that can be something we do. Right now, I'm saying, hey, last Saturday of the month, first Saturday, whatever, pick one, okay? Feels kind of natural. And if we have a lot of takers and have a big long list, maybe we can make it, even more frequent than that. So I do support that, and I think that's a good thing, okay? Yeah, Alex, you had something to say?
What is our methodology for collecting data and saving files?
That's what I'm saying. We don't have one right now. And until we figure out how we make agreements, we don't really have a process.
So we had a list. We had a list of applications. I think Trello was one.
Yeah.
GitHub. So that's the question. And there's another problem with the primer on Agile. Number 2, where Glenn mentioned how to do decision practices get adopted. And that's
in fact, that to me is a huge enabler. So,
yeah.
Hey, Kayla, welcome.
There's 2 things involved with data.
Right. Alex, since you brought it up, all right, well, let me go after Josh, because Josh has his hand up also.
I just wanted to, before we get too deep into the meeting, just to check and make sure Josh Winder's mic was working.
Good idea. Jaswinder, do you sound like a chipmunk or do you sound like Jaswinder?
Testing.
Okay, that is not a chipmunk. Okay.
That's Jaswinder.
That's just Jaswinder we're familiar with, yes.
Yeah.
And his Heiner's mic is working, I think. He already tested it, but is Colin's mic working?
We have not yet heard from Colin today. Kayla,
Okay.
It was funny because earlier Jaswinder was sounding like a chipmunk, and you've probably heard some of us. I think Alex used to sound like a chipmunk also, okay? Maybe me also.
I think my mic is fine.
Yeah, that sounds like Heiner. Okay, good.
Bit rate.
Okay.
So we've got a condition on one side that's data, hard facts and information. On the other side, we've got a wholesome, organic interface, human emotions and all that sort of stuff. So how do we bring those together in a way that doesn't diminish or destructive over?
Well, to me, there was something else that was in the mix there, and I'm wondering whether we can actually discuss it and then hopefully come to an agreement about it quickly. Okay, so I'm going to be a little bit unfair and just say what I think it ought to be. Okay, and this is very biased, and I'm just going to state this and just put this out there because I've tried not to for 3 years, and I'm going to try something different. Okay, here's what I propose. If we think there's a good practice that we really want ourselves, myself, okay, if I really want to practice something, and I think it would be good to spread as a quote unquote next practice or best practice, people use different terminology on this, then I propose that we circulate that for comments. In other words, say, I'm not going to interrupt people. What do you guys think? Something essentially that casual, okay? And we give it some number of days, whether it's 2 days, 5 days, 7 days, 30 days, whatever we decide to agree on. But the poster, the person who's originally proposing this practice can say, I think we ought to give this 7 days. Now, you can react to that in a couple of ways. You can say, yep, I'm with you. Or two, no, I think this ought to be extended for longer discussion because 7 days is not enough to collect people and get some agreement on this. So I propose 14 days. So that could be another form of reaction. A third form of feedback could be, no, I don't like it. I think it's a bad practice and here's why. And here's what I'm going to do instead, okay? And I propose that that kind of interaction take place after every proposal is circulated until the agreed upon period is done with some number of days for what's called settling time or fermentation time, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so after 7 days, if at the end of those 7 days, the last 2 or 3 days have been relatively still or quiet or fairly inactive, then I would say let's adopt it. But adoption means we just say, hey, this appears to have been adopted as an RFC, okay? At any point, anyone can still come back and say, we need to change that for the following reason. Okay, we didn't consider this kind of a corner case, or we didn't consider what happens when I get triggered, or we didn't consider when somebody new comes on, blah, blah, blah. So for those reasons, here's how I recommend we change our practice. And then we go into the same number of days for feedback on that until it settles again. So there's a lot of activity, then it settles, and then we adopt. And then we change and we have a lot of activity and discussion, then it settles again, and then we adopt, okay? And this is not my idea. This is something that was circulated way back a long time ago in the 60s when the whole, or 70s when the internet was first proposed and nobody knew who was on the internet. So you basically had to have a process of this. You had to have a number of people saying, yes, this is a good idea, no, this is a bad idea, and give it some number of days to settle before these RFCs, of which there are thousands, by the way, get adopted. So I don't know if you guys are aware, but all the technology on the internet, whether it's email, whether it's file transfer, whether it's interactive speech, whether it's web practice, those are all just requests for comment. Those are all standards that have been proposed, but not in quote formally adopted in its original form. Now, subsequently, some organizations have adopted them, like W3C and others, okay? But originally, they all appeared as just what's called RFC 1, RFC 2, RFC 3, RFC 822, RFC blah, 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 okay? Extra credit for anybody who recognizes what RFC 822 is, okay? So anyway, that's the way the internet evolved, is that you just had people proposing good ideas, you had a lot of discussion around them, and eventually the discussion dies down because pretty much everybody brought up what they thought was reasonable to bring up, and then there was some way to resolve this, okay? And then after a period of inactivity, it basically becomes de facto practice. That is what I'm proposing for barn raising in GCC. I'm not talking about any other group. I'm just talking about barn raising for now. And how we want to adopt it, we can talk about that if we agree on this as the basic structure. Over. Josh.
Yeah, I was just thinking as far as versioning or days, we've got a natural cycle, which is every 7 days, there's a barn raising session. So what if it was version 0.0, next week is 0.1, 0.2, when we get up to 1.0, so a 10 cycle. Of last week, we adopted nothing. So we're going to stay at 0.1. Oh, we adopted one thing. Okay, we're at 0.2. So that's what I was thinking is a very easy thing is we know what versioning we're on because of what version of barn raising, the natural 7-day cycle. And then if we did adopt something during that week, then we move it up a 0.1. And
Actually, you bring up an excellent point, okay? So if we had a big charter like the US Constitution, okay, I would actually agree with you that we could actually version it every week. What I'm actually considering is we don't actually know what everything is that's going to go in it. So I'm just talking about very, very small micro agreements. So one micro agreement could be, hey, let's agree to have check-ins at the start of every meeting, and let's agree to have checkouts at the end of every meeting. That could be one micro agreement. Another micro agreement could be, hey, I'm going to propose that we not interrupt each other unless you really, really, really feel compelled to, and you just can't hold yourself back, okay? That's another possible practice, okay? Another possible practice is, I'm not going to call people names. I'm not going to use the B word. I'm not going to use the F word. I'm not going to use the A word. So we're just going to try and do that. Other people could disagree, okay? And that's what the discussion could be about for some number of days. But after some number of days, if it's settled, hopefully then somebody, what it really brings to forward is whoever cares would take the initiative to write it up. Like if I care about something, then I will write it up as a request for comment, or we can name it whatever we want. A practice, a next practice, a best practice, a guideline, a rule, a whatever, a law, a charter, some of those words are better than other words, okay? The word that the internet has adopted is a request for comment. It's an RFC, okay? And that has stuck with the internet. But I don't care as long as we kind of understand this practice and decide to adopt it. So my very first RFC, and let's call it RFC 1 for GCC. Maybe it's GCC RFC. I don't know how to put it. Is I will write this up, this proposal, as this is how we're going to make decisions. This is how we're going to get adoption across things, and let's circulate it for discussion.
I checked with Google. That is a meta violation. You can't do that.
Why?
I'm just kidding.
Now you're just trying to distract and defocus here. Okay.
There is some rules about interrupting that we agreed upon already.
Yeah,
and
I mean, people who feel strongly about that, like me, I just interrupted you. Okay, could say I'll write it up, or you could write it up.
Can I address this? I think I have something here.
Yeah, sure.
Go ahead, Alex.
Violation number 1. Over.
Yeah, I just interrupted you because we don't have an agreement. Okay, Glenn.
Okay, yeah. Well, there's a few things. First of all, if let's say we have a model or we adopt a model where we circulate sessions, different people have a responsibility to moderate a specific session, then of course for that session they can put down certain rules or practices or principles that they want to be followed. And let's say that, those more or less apply, or one tries at least to accommodate the wishes for that session. So that would be, something that would address this issue while at the same time making it dynamic. Because, for example, if you take the example of interruptions, typical example, there can be some sessions where we really want to just let everyone speak out, maybe even have a little pause afterwards. We really want to have that thing. Then could be another session we really want to have more interactive exchange, where let's say one has an agreement that you interrupt with a question, or it's a short interception. It's very different. There's a big difference between the interruption and the interception. Yeah, go for the interception. Yeah.
I do agree. I do think that there are nuances to different kinds of interaction. And by the way, I have a blog post that has dozens, if not hundreds, of different interpersonal interaction styles, all the way from brainstorming to really focused problem solving to getting to know each other to dating to sex. You know, there's a lot of different kinds of interpersonal reactions, and different rules, you would probably agree, apply in different cases, right? You're not going to conduct yourself the same way in one as necessarily another. And so when we have some of these very focused Saturday sessions, we give 75% of the time to someone to say, run it how you want to, okay? Then we're all attending by agreement by saying, this is what we agreed to do. And by the way, we reserve 15 to 30 minutes at the end of it, then to have the retrospective. That was how the structure was set up back when we did this experiment. So then in those last 15 or 30 minutes, we can say, I really didn't like that rule, and here's how it affected my participation with it, etc. Right? So I would say there's a very good lesson that Agile has learned, by the way, and I'll bring that up right now. And that is, in the course of execution, in the course of doing, quote unquote, your job or whatever the focus is, okay? It's really distracting and detracting and confuses other people if you're trying to change the rules in the middle of execution. That's why Agile builds in at the end of a sprint or iteration or whatever you call it, okay? End of a 2-week or 4-week or 6-week period, a period called the retrospective. And that's where you can come up and say, here's what didn't work for me, or here's what really worked well for me, or here's what we should try doing, and blah, 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 okay? All those standard 4 questions, okay? But if you try and do that in the middle of execution, then people get confused. It's like, okay, so what rules are we following here? You know, you're doing this, I'm doing that, you know, then it just wastes too much time. And that's why the selection of the sprint period or the iteration period, okay, is so important. It's got to be short enough that you can live with whatever rules have been agreed upon until the next retrospective. And if you can't do that for 6 weeks, then don't make your sprint 6 weeks. If you can't go for 2 weeks, don't make it 2 weeks. Make it shorter, okay? But in that period, everybody's got to say, okay, I will abide by this framework for the next sprint or the next iteration. And only by doing so can we really practice, really embrace, really learn, and then effectively revise and modify, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a good point. What I wanted to also mention there was that model that we tried sort of has that built into it, because you have the retrospective at the end of each session. So maybe you have a retrospective every single session. Because one thing I've been thinking about since last week is that the times when I really have felt that these meetings have gone off the rails have kind of been when we have done something like that. We've sort of been in a flow of a really interesting conversation. And then at some point, we're suddenly gone into meta mode and we're talking about the rules of engagement. And that really can break this natural flow where there's a real interest in just pursuing an idea and going with it wherever it leads and just see where we end up. And, you know, if, let's say, you know, you react a little bit to some person saying a little too much, or, you know, the way they reject or something, that then maybe it's better to try to respond to that later, and to at least have a space to follow through the thread and just see where we end up if it's a very complex question that we're looking into. So last week, for example, I mean, we didn't really have any specific rules. So it was Jas Winder who was the moderator, and he sort of sometimes has the no rule, which is another way of doing it, perfectly fine. And we sort of naturally went into what I found to be an incredibly fascinating discussion about complex systems, and I mean incredibly vast subjects, obviously, that we touched upon. So you know, that's I guess what I get into is that can be contained in this kind of model. If let's say we just, you know, have an agreement that you know, one person, they really want to bring something forth, we play according to those rules for one session for, let's say, 1.5 hours, and we have a retrospective towards the end. That would be my suggestion for a way to, you know, very specifically do this, and we've already done it. So you know, we know that it actually works in the barn racing. Of course, you could have like a special retrospective session as well. But just before I forget it, I also wanted to mention that there was an agreement, which I think was sort of an emergent agreement. It's not a rule, but it's more like a principle, where for the open session, we wrote this. It was me and Doug who wrote it, but we wrote open meeting space for people to talk freely about anything. We bring an attitude of friendliness, openness, and curiosity to allow something generative to happen. And that sentence has really been with me. We bring an attitude of friendliness, openness, and curiosity to allow something generative to happen. And that it seems to me that that's something that has been like an emergent agreement. It's not totally specific, but it's more than nothing. And it's certainly something I would suggest as a sort of a general principle that's never wrong. You know, it's like, because it doesn't restrict the style. It's just, you know, it's more like the attitude. And then so let's say you could have that as a general principle for all meetings. It's sort of the attitude. You really want to listen with an open mind, you know, leaning in a little bit, that attitude, just being respectful. I mean, there's no downside to that in these kind of meetings. And then in terms of the more specific rules, those can be more, you know, one session at a time, so we can play with some very specific rules as well. I mean, I think the problem really will happen if you want to impose some very rigid, specific rules on everything. That's kind of when you get into trouble. But that's not necessary, because, you know, we can be flexible, and we can have some very specific rules that we can try for a certain time and then do a retrospective. And it seems to me this fits pretty well in with the agile framework as I've understood it. So yeah, I think we've kind of been touching upon these agile principles for quite a while, even if, you know, maybe not in a very organized way.
If I may use a crude metaphor, I think after we flushed the handle on October 1st, 2017, we've been swirling around the toilet bowl. We're getting closer and closer and closer to the actual pipe at the bottom of it, okay? To use a crude metaphor, okay? But Glenn, as you're aware, because I know you were there is a spreadsheet, I'm not gonna share it right now, that I've called the behavior profile or behavior experiment, okay? And it's got like 90 different practices. And there's about a dozen people who have said, this is what I'm gonna do, this is what I'm not gonna do, etc. I just added your suggestion of, I will bring an attitude of openness, friendliness, ... okay? And that is actually now item number 89, okay? I added also a 90, which still needs to be refined, which is, I will try to disagree well. And here's what disagree well means, okay? So I do think that it's actually very, very interesting that there's now 90 such things that people put on this particular spreadsheet as things that we could potentially discuss as practices. And there's about a dozen people that have gone in and taken the initiative and time to actually indicate where they stand on each of these practices. So I think that's actually a very good start. I'm not going to bring it up because for me, the most important thing, and I said, if I was able to achieve any common understanding around this RFC process for making decisions and adopting things and making changes, I will have considered this a very, very pivotal GCC barn raising conversation. Okay. And I feel I've accomplished that because my action right now is to write it up in a very simple form. By the way, in a very complicated form, I wrote it up probably 2 or 3 years ago, and I did circulate it, but I'm going to circulate it much more simply this time around. The TLDR version, okay? I'm going to circulate that version and then point back to the more formal version, which I also may revise. So I would like to sort of begin practicing that by saying for the next 15 seconds, do I hear any hesitation, any reticence, any objection to adopting that process for doing proposals and circulating it for feedback and then having some adoption? Josh, and then Alex.
Yeah, I just want to say if there's not someone bottom lining even that proposal that we're talking about, proposing proposals,
I said I
if
would.
someone, yeah, but you got a lot on your plate is my whole point, is that
But I'm going
becomes,
to. It's that important. I'm gonna do it. It's that
I
important.
believe you. I believe you. I'm not saying that you won't, Sam. I'm just saying helping each other administrate, I think, is the thing that's missing in this whole thing. And then passing the ball from administrator to administrator and making sure all the administrators are on the same document or on the same versioning.
That to me requires agreements. And we haven't even figured out how to make agreements yet. And that's why I think
I know we've been circling around this for so long. Yeah, I know you keep saying that we haven't had an agreement, so we can't make an agreement about having an agreement. We've been doing that for years. But the bottom line is, if you're, wait, let me just say what I'm trying to say.
I'm interrupting because we haven't got an agreement about interruption.
Fair enough. You've made your point over the years. I got it. I'm clear about that. But I'm going to keep going just to say, if you're working on something and then you get busy and you want someone else to help you to continue that work so it doesn't just get stopped, how would you like to ask someone for help, and do they know how to help you? And if you're bottom lining something and you're passing that ball, you're the bottom liner on that thing, and you pass it to somebody else, how do they pass the ball back to you? If we can have an agreement on that.
That's a very good question. We don't have those kinds of agreements right now.
We can make them. It's very possible.
That's what this is. This is the start in my mind of doing that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I agree. That's my agreement.
I'd love to get there. I'd love to get there. I'd love to say, here's 200 videos I haven't yet gotten around to. Can anybody actually take this on? But I don't have those kind of agreements. I haven't even written down what I do for each of these videos.
I understand. Yeah. It's hard. It's very difficult when you have something that you're working on. How do you document that enough to pass it to someone where they can continue that work?
That's actually not the hard part. I've documented a lot of this. What's hard is getting people interested enough to actually read it and understand it.
That's interesting, because I thought you've shown it quite clearly. Can we go around the room and ask people?
Yes, I have shown it quite clearly, but no one else has indicated a willingness to actually, even do it for their own videos.
I'll put my hand up. I'm interested. Anyone else?
Yes.
Well, Alex was next, and then as soon as Josh is done, because I don't know if Josh is done, then Alex, then Jaswinder.
If we're going to have a rule, not a rule, a tradition that we value as a community impact, then it certainly does need to be in a document written up for the users who come in to see it at the beginning of the chat session. Look at it. They can find the link there because we've posted at the beginning of each meeting. If they come in late, it can be reposted. That way, everybody on the session can see this list of 10 traditional adopted methods of communicating and collaborating for a community of impact that we've agreed upon. And the ones that are working best can rise up higher to the top of the list if we use a flagging method, or a weighting system, or just have a way of flagging the ones that are not working. They're causing disruption, or they're causing repeated a breakdown of the progress and focusing. If they blur the image, blur the picture with unnecessary complications and rabbit holes, they need to be flagged.
Okay.
But okay, over.
Good points. I've got some response, but I think Just Winder is next.
Yeah, let's put it up to the flagpole and run it up. Let's see what happens. Have a revision every so often. I'm for it.
Thanks.
So Sam, did I understand you right that what you said was you wanted to write a kind of RFC and send that around and get comments?
Yes. I, by the way, have written it up as an RFC, but I'm going to write it up even simpler than that. I'm not even going to call it an RFC. I'm going to call it, I don't know, proposal or something like that, okay? And it's going to be very short. It's going to be just a few lines, okay? Maybe a paragraph. But it's going to link back to this other thing I wrote up 2 or 3 years ago, which people read and said, this is too heavy. This is too hard to read. This is too specific, so they didn't like it when I wrote it up in some detail. So I'm not going to include all the details this time around. I'm just going to do it at the high level that I discussed it today, and then invite some feedback on it, okay? So yes, I did agree to take that on. I have a couple of responses to what Alex said, okay? So one of the things that Alex brought up is I view it as an issue of transparency. In other words, if you're coming into a situation like a Zoom session, you ought not be surprised, that, oh, hey, you just violated a rule, which you didn't even know about, okay? So I would like to avoid that situation, okay? So I haven't got a full solution to that, but I'm just recognizing that that is the intent, okay? I also want to relax this notion of agreement somewhat. I want to eliminate the whole negative connotation for now of enforcement, of what happens when a rule gets violated, okay? Let's take an example of this no interruption, which I've stated is my preference, okay? I do know that some people are very clear that that's not something that they will actually sign on to, okay? And completely understand that. And so when a proposal gets made of we should feel free to interrupt at any time, or somebody else can come by and propose, hey, let's try and not interrupt as much as possible. Those are all requests for understanding. In fact, that might be a good thing. RFU, request for understanding, okay? In that, hey, if you violate that, or, let's not use the word violation. If you interrupt me and you've made it very clear that that's what you're going to do because that's how you behave, I'm going to be very appreciative that you were upfront about that. However, if somebody says, hey, they're going to try and not interrupt, but they do interrupt, then I will actually say, something must be so important. Somebody must be so concerned about this issue that they feel the need to interrupt. With that common understanding, I can now have a much more open interaction by saying, this person doesn't normally interrupt, but they chose to do it this time. What's going on? Let me lean into that. I think that's a much more constructive behavior than for me to say, you said you wouldn't interrupt me, so therefore I'm gonna ding you 10 cents and 10 cents is gonna go into the GCC kitty. No, I'm not gonna do that. It's a chance to mutually understand each other and just figure out what works best. That's what I'm really trying to get at with these agreements, okay? Nothing punitive, nothing negative. We're all here, I'm here, at least, I'm not gonna say we. I'm here to try and learn how collaboration can best happen. And I'm trying to codify, I'm trying to understand, I'm trying to build models, I'm trying to build simulation. If Barry were here, he'd provide 3 other papers that he's written over the last 40 years on this topic. But I just want to really figure out how we can actually do this well as a learning community. And that's why I really want to get rid of all these negative connotations around agreements or contracts or guidelines or rules. Over. Josh.
Yeah, I like the word that you just said, learning community. And I would love to hear that in the name. And I also like the word collaboration. And I'd like to hear that in the name. In other words, the word barn raising is kind of a misnomer, I think, at this point. So we haven't even decided on a barn, let alone the agreements on how to raise the barn. So maybe
the
some
foundation.
Yeah, I'm just saying, just from a marketing standpoint, if you're creating a narrative and you're clearly communicating what things are doing, having a good name that says it in the name helps for community. So learning community with the global group, global learning community group, and collaboration experimentation could be some things that make sense in terms of when someone comes here and doesn't know what we're doing, it says it all in the name. Just changing the name can really change a lot. Like I've been tempted for the last 5 months to change the picture that's been on the Facebook group, because as admins, we all agreed that anyone can change it. And if someone doesn't like it, they can change it back, or we can discuss it in a Zoom call. But it's been sitting there saying coexist for a while, and we've been doing a great job coexisting. Maybe it's time to collaborate and learn together. I'm complete. Go ahead.
So I see Colin and Alex and Glenn.
Yeah, I like the coexist. I'm not so sure I like the fact that religion is highlighted as the thing to coexist with. That I disagree with, but I really like the coexist. In fact, I like the coexist so much I'm willing to overlook all the religious symbols because it doesn't look like you forgot any. So that's okay. And that to me is secular. So I like that. Even though I don't adhere to any specific religion, I think it's one of the ones that should rotate for the, one of the 10 we switch up. But the we is the thing that gets me. And I've discussed a lot about what the we is and what a we project looks like, and what does we do in Agile look like, and what do I do in Agile look like, and what do I want to bring? What do we want to bring? To bring where? Why? And that's kind of the opening question that Glenn said, Neil Davidson said in a check-in. You basically say, why you think you're here. And I think that's the number one thing that a check-in should be, is, to me, in barn raising, it's more getting ready to barn raising. That's why I like when he said foundation, because we're not really raising any barns, we're getting ready to raise barns. And I think that's why I keep saying about the meta and the learning. What tools are we going to use? Like, let's get ready to do something. Let's make an RFC proposal or a process so that when we want to bring forward a good idea, we're ready and we know how. So we're really getting ready to do different things so that we don't miss each other's signals. But Sam brings up the most important point. If you're not interested and you don't want to invest in it, or you don't know how to, then you probably won't. And that gets back to the we question. So Sam started to get into an example earlier on, maybe half hour ago, 20 minutes ago, and it wasn't quite the example that I was looking for. And then later on, he gave another example about the videos, like there's 200 hours of video. And maybe that's what Sam sees, a big chunk of the we as all that work that we've put into videos. To me, it looks like a conversation experiment. Like, how can people, that's what I see here. And how could you make the conversation better? And is it worthwhile to pick bones with somebody who's just going to not be giving a fair insight? Or do you trust that person and going to work with that person so you're actually going to get somewhere and get some value out of that exchange? And I think the lack of focus is the fact that we're trying to get ready, and the check-ins to me should be about stating that I'm trying to focus on this. And the whole barn raising session could be just updates, like a sprint meeting. We're saying, well, team one, yes, well, this is what we did last week, and this is what we're planning on doing next week, and these are the problems I see that it might get in the way. And Other than that, I'll let you know. And then it goes on to the next group, you know, and then after you go through a few of these sprints, moving your time, that's the key. It brings up the word next. What's next? So if you know what's next and you have it worked into your schedule, and therefore you have it worked into your interest, and if you do it enough and it's good enough, maybe it'll work into a successful piece of work of some sort with somebody. For example, if I wanted to work with Alex on making a story about the divine masculine feminine and trying to do some big thing with Alex, like how would I do that? Would I do that with GCC? Would we go to the Trello board, or would I suggest that I think that would be a great topic, seeing as we have trouble with masculine feminine in this group from time to time with different points of view, or if it's one of the 5 major challenges that the world has to, you know, come to grips with, you know, sexuality and how to respect the different nuances within, or, you know, is that something that I would do on Trello, or would I just call them up and we just do that in the background and not even bother you guys at all about that? Like, are you guys interested in what I'm doing? Like, what's the thing I'm doing, bringing here? What am I learning from here, taking away from here? So what really is the we? So to me, that is all about the check-ins and all about the focusing on what that micro agreement looks like, who's part of that micro agreement, and what's next. And how, and right now it seems like we're getting ready to be able to do that kind of a thing. So I think it's very, very fuzzy on good examples of what we would actually do as a GCC. And that's why I say the GCC we, to me, is all the stuff that helps support this container, which is number 1, the way we communicate together with Zoom calls, how we document them, which Sam has been very diligent about, and possibly preparing, as Glenn says, to have an individual present something. And I do think there's different formats of interrupting. In fact, sometimes I don't even think it is interruption. I think it's just active listening. If we could do active listening, we'd be 2 miles ahead. But if we take it as interrupting, then it's distracting. So, you know, some conversations are a lecture. So you don't want to be really interrupted till questions at the end, maybe. But some things you're exploring together. If you ever talk to Barry, he's going to want to do a Socratic method with you. So you're going to be talking the whole time. So, you know, it depends who you're talking with. Thanks.
I believe it's Alex, then Glenn, and then me.
I was looking at this all these issues in a bottle, and the bottle's upside down. So all the issues are coming down to the neck of the bottle. That's why they get clogged up there. That's the bottleneck. And the issues that are getting clogged up there are the issues of the collaboration experiment and the sprouting. See, these issues like Colin brought up about sexuality or gender or race, politics, they can be sprouting issues that are handled elsewhere in a sprout, not in the conversation experiment, the collaboration experiment, which is also a conversational experiment. But applying agile techniques is always a good idea because that increases the chances of our focusing better and doing all the things that we do together better, gradually, incrementally improving. Over.
Okay, thanks. Glenn?
Yeah, to follow up on this about a learning community. So, you know, let's presume that to the question, what is GCC or what is these meetings, that at least there seems to be an agreement that there's an interest in learning in general, that there's an interest in, you know, expanding our perspectives and using conversation as a tool to expand perspectives. I mean, the advantage of defining it as a learning community is pretty much anything can be used. So it's like we actually can do that, but like if we if we try to make it more specific, that we're going to, create a book that's going to be sold this and that, then that's what's difficult. So this is, where, I mean, interestingly enough, for me, at least I can say, I view this as an opportunity to learn. I view this as an opportunity to just share, to listen, to get to know people, to get to know ideas, to explore ideas together, and to build an understanding together over time. The advantage of that view is that we can actually do it, and we have done it, and it can take multiple forms. Disadvantage, pretty obvious. Anyone who wants to see any objective, metrics, what have you been doing? They're not going to get anything done. Because you can't define that. It's far bigger, it's deeper, it touches on all kinds of levels at the same time. So if you sort of view the core of the issue, that we're getting together, we're sharing ideas, we're collecting attention, we're in an exploration. We're in a learning and an exploration. Then it will be vague, inevitably, and you can have certain specifics within that. But if that's sort of the master framework, then it will be vague. So if we accept that it will be vague, then we can proceed. And we can proceed pretty much no matter what. And we can deal with difficult meetings, nice meetings, people having a good time, people arguing, all of it can be used. So I believe this is how I see it. I see this as a learning community, as an exploration of ideas, and the more specific projects, they are specific projects in the service of that larger movement of building an understanding. And if we succeed in building an understanding, we will probably certainly not be able to measure it. But if we succeed, we might be able to feel it in some way. And I believe that's probably the most important thing that we could do to influence the world in a positive way. If we can figure out how to use online conversations to really expand consciousness, expand understanding, expand learning across various different subjects, with various different rules of engagements and styles. And I mean, that's a wild thing. It's an unmeasurable thing. It's a relevant thing. It's right at the core of everything that's happening in the world. And that's something that will make a difference if we can do that well. But it will be completely vague. I don't see any way out of that. And we can have specifics within it, but the master framework will be vague, undefined.
Over?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to go, and then I think Josh has his hand up as well. I wanted to address this whole notion of learning community, because I do think that at least what I've been viewing GCC as has been a learning community. It's a town square where I get to learn, okay, when I actually have conversations with people, okay? But the way you talk about it, and the way I think I would like to talk about it, is what is, sorry about that. What is doing the learning? By what? Is it me? Or is it there's something here called the GCC that's actually learning something? Because that second point is much more, as you say, vague, okay, because we don't know what GCC is, okay? But as far as individuals are concerned, we each could come, and probably already are, coming as learning entities, trying to figure out how we learn, okay? Each of us is doing it differently. My memory is probably not as good as Kayla's memory, okay? Somebody else like Colin writes it down, okay? I write it down in something else. You write it down and give long interpretations where you actually bring a lot of your own mind into what was said, okay? Other people like myself probably just jot down words that are just little, markers for what, appeared in the conversation, okay? We all have very different styles of this. So I'm probably doing it less effectively than some of you. And there's probably a lot of practices here that I would love to adopt because it would improve the way I learn. And I'm hoping that other people may have that same perspective. But as far as what the GCC is to learn, there needs to be where that learning takes place, okay? It's not just who's doing the learning, it's how does that learning show up? How does that look like it's learning? How is it different from what it was a month ago or 2 years ago, okay? So to me, these attendant issues are the entity question as well as the shared global memory question, which I think are just very, very foundational. And the one that I just decided to pick off today was just how do we make certain small micro agreements? And I think that to me is going to be very pivotal. And it's so important to me, I'm saying it twice now. And I believe I'm over and Josh is next.
Well, I'm glad we're getting somewhere and talking about it. And I just had a vision that I just see so clearly in my mind, which is the very simple 2-column structure, things you're going to do and things that got done. And it's so simple that it doesn't work because who's doing it and is it actually done? So if you take those 2 columns and you add 2 more columns next to it, so here's all the things we want to do. Here's the things that just one person is doing, and I'm not waiting for any agreement to ask if it's done. I say it's done. And then the last column is I've shared it with other people so they can see what I think is done. And then someone else can grab it from the share document and say, I don't think that's done. So we put it back to the first document of it's something that needs to get done. And then someone grabs it and says, I'll do that. And then they do it and they say it's done. And then they put it back to the shared document, I'm done. And then someone goes, well, that's not how I would do it. And they grab it and put it back to the document and say, it's supposed to get done this way. So I'm going to grab that myself and do that. And this is how I did it. And I'm done doing it. And now I share it. And someone else grabs it and goes, well, that's not how I would do it. And then they grab it. And next thing you know, there's a we, and we're all collaborating without any agreements. What do you think of that, Sam?
I actually think there's a lot of agreements in there.
Well, there's no agreement other than if you want to grab something on the could be done list on a thing of that is there, you with no agreements to anyone else can grab it, do something, and then say that you're done doing something. So there needs to be at least a time frame where if you say you did it, don't put it in the done if it's not done, because then if you do, the person can grab it from the shared and stick it back into the first column or even the second column. But that way, no one needs to make an agreement to grab something and go do it themselves. Is that, tell me, what, am I flawed in my thinking? Like, please.
Well, to me, it brings up a lot of questions, which to me do look like agreements, but Colin's got his hand up and then maybe I'll respond.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Sam. I just wondered if everybody noticed that my hair is in the same shape as Jazzwinder's hat. It's kind of cool. I have both of us on the same screen so I can see this one looks like the other. Yeah, it seems like a little pointy. No, we've had many agreements already. And I was thinking maybe we need to remember the fact that we've already agreed. So it's the memory that's missing or the what's next. So I like the idea of the list that Josh mentioned, because that sounds like a summary of what's on Trello, right? But Trello is where you can put a little more detail.
I don't think I was heard. I don't think it was clear. I'm saying that the to-do list, we're all waiting for someone to collaborate so it gets done. And I'm saying take away of the collaboration. You do it by yourself if you want to. You complete
Yeah.
it by yourself with no one helping you. And
Right.
then you put it in the done list, and then you put it in another list, which is I make sure after it's done. This is where we've always failed. We don't share the thing that's done with any kind of request for comment afterwards saying, I am done. I can't do
Yeah.
any more. Is
No,
that
I heard you completely. I
okay?
understand. So yeah, it is the trade-off of what's next, obviously. So you're saying that there's a 3-step process of what's next, which will work for some tasks.
I'll be clear. I'm saying document what you do, share what you do, and if you're done, signal that you're done so that someone else can go grab it and then do that and do it better.
Okay, thanks, Josh. No, I was
Okay.
agreeing with all of those things. What I'm saying is that we've already agreed to this, to use Trello, or at least to try to use Trello. And the problem was, well, some people didn't know how to get in there and use it. I don't know. I think Stacy had a problem. I'm not sure who really had the problem, but I don't think it's that difficult of a tool if you actually want to do something. And you can get assistance and we can help each other, but that seems to be the low barrier bar.
No
To me-
assistance, no helping each other. That's my point. That's where we all fail.
No, but the point is that you can have both. You can have a group of 1 or you can have a group of 10. And so it doesn't eliminate anybody. And the spreadsheet you're talking about, to me, would be the check-in. On Saturday, you go over that spreadsheet and say, oh, well, I said I was going to do this and I said I was going to do that. And I built a database for this and I can search for these things and I can do this. And is this thing anybody could use? Or should I be doing something else? Or, and then Sam could say, well, I'm doing this. I'm going to make an RFC for this. And so if you go to the Trello board and you see, the latest, search by person, you see exactly what they're working on. Search for yourself, you see what you're working on. It's just too easy. It's the commitment that's missing. And so we've already agreed to use Trello. That's why I'm laughing inside. You guys just can't see it. And also the idea of I like the idea that we're trying, because I think there is something worth holding on to, not just jumping to old school methods. But at the same time, I think we do need a certain amount of natural flexibility, like agile, where you could be filling a role, but that doesn't mean you're that role for the GCC. But people are clearly know that within the next 2 weeks, there's expectations of some sort that you've agreed to. And I'm saying if we don't remember we've made these agreements, maybe we need a ceremony where we light a candle and we say, okay, now Alex is going to write a document and it's going to explain his idea. And then Yogan is going to come and try to find the root cause that Sam and Colin couldn't find, that Alex didn't think was useful. And, I tried to set that up a couple of weeks ago because, we all tried to help Alex with his project. I don't see any documentation of his project other than a bunch of websites out there. So I don't really have a concise executive statement of what this is supposed to do. And that may be fine, but it's not going viral. So the question is, why isn't it working? So that sounds like a root cause analysis. So where did Yogan and Alex get off with that? Like, I wonder if they even contacted each other, if anything happened. That could have been put on Trello. Alex could have said, yes, I'm interested. Thank you very much. And you could have said, yes, I'm interested. And I'm going to put 5 hours towards this. And let's meet on Tuesday at 7 o'clock my time. Like, that's what gets things done. You can always cancel, but you have a plan of what's next. And without a plan of what's next, you're going nowhere. And now I understand for people like Glenn, it's a little different. Glenn is more into trying to get into perception and try to learn things about perception. So he's into these longer conversations where his Trello board might say, I would like to have a long conversation about this topic with somebody and then try to produce this document. So, it's not so clear cut, but everybody has time and an output and an interest. And if we can't get that stuff clear, then, it doesn't matter what tool we're using. And I'm sorry, this is the 15th time I've said this message. And also I cut out a gem of Sam being asked by Lauren, what is barn raising? What are you trying to do? And Sam just laid it right out. I wonder if anybody can repeat 2 sentences out of that. I'm sure we could, but you know, are we focused? Do we know what we're doing? Can we support each other? Is there a folder I can go look at where all our gems are there? And this is what Glenn wants to do. This is what Sam wants to do. This is what Jazz wants to do.
Yeah.
And then Jazz can come and say, you know what? I've changed it. I've learned something. I want to do something a little bit different. So I'm going to make a new one.
Keep going.
Kayla's got her hand up.
Communication. So yeah, I'll go, but it's about communication and
What happened to the newsletter?
the agreements we've
Kayla's got her
already
hand up.
made. Yeah, it's about the agreements we already made. That was my point, Josh, not about what tool, but the agreements we've already made.
What happened to
Wait,
Tracy's?
Kayla's got her hand up.
Okay, so I like the idea of changing the name. I like the collaboration experimentation. I think that would draw a lot of really cool people. I also like what Sam said about letting things percolate for about a week, and then also utilizing the versions. It doesn't have to be so complicated to where we have an entire 2-hour discussion. I mean, it could be something like your check-ins for about 30 minutes, depending on how many people are here, 15, 30 minutes. And then let's discuss our versions of agreements, you know, and say, okay, we'll agree not to interrupt each other. And then get a general consensus and put it on the chat. I mean, when you come into a group where there's a lot of people on a lot of different minds, it's kind of nice to have a written refresher. Okay, this is what we've agreed upon, and then go into your topics. Now, something like Trello, I've never been on there before, I have to agree. And I am willing to go on there to see what it's about, as long as it's not like Facebook. So a place like Trello could be kind of where you have all of your conversations, other conversations that you had wanted to discuss prior to barn raising / collaboration experimentation. You know, just kind of narrow it down. And hey, there's nothing wrong with having these conversations as long as there is an agenda on a week-by-week basis. But maybe perhaps to invite a larger conversation where there's a bigger topic at hand once a month. I don't know, that's just my thought, because it sounds like we're out of ideas to discuss as a whole, because the same people come into the room, which is fantastic. I love all of you guys. But we're kind of getting into these weekly meetings where we talk about agreeing, and it's getting a little too easy to discuss. So that's my proposal, narrowing it down, change the name, let an idea percolate, spend a few minutes checking in. After your few minutes, spend a few minutes talking about an agreement, and then open the floor to like one of the funner discussions about the universe or religion or whatever you guys want to argue about. I'm complete.
Alex? Thanks.
Yeah. If we don't make progress, we're not moving forward. And the fact that if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result each time, it's the definition of insanity. One of the definitions of insanity, continuing to do the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result each time. So you change your course, and Stacey was bringing up a newsletter idea on Trello, and I was watching closely to see how that developed, but she got side railed somehow. I
would really like to bring that up, and Alex, you better stop right there, because I'm the one who documented it on Trello, not Stacey. And the reason I documented it was for this exact reason.
Was it okay that we all allow Colin to interrupt Alex? Is that okay? Colin, you're next, but Alex, can you finish?
The periodical was proposed, and it was Stacey who proposed it, but she got side railed somehow. That's all. I don't know what, I wasn't following Trello, but I did see the proposal, and I did see the follow-up comment that said there's some issues to do with that, some issues that were preventing her from making any progress. And I failed to understand how that could occur because she was interested in the idea and she put some thought into it. And I
totally agree.
I wanted to support her. So if anybody else wants to help me support her, let's get into it and do it when she's here. Over.
Okay, Colin?
Yeah, first of all, Kayla, the Trello is it's kind of like a fancy cross between a to-do list with able to put tags on things and a bulletin board. So it's just like lists and you can put whatever you want. We spent a few weeks going over it together and showing people how to use it. It's not difficult at all. It's easier to use than Facebook, if you ask me. And it's basically a nice way to organize lists of things, and people can comment on it like a post, but you can assign time limits, or you can say, you know, overdue or very important, and you know, and people can sign up and join it. So each person who wants to be involved in something. So if there's only one person on that task, it's a solo task. So that's the Trello, and to me, it was the clearest way to keep something besides having a bunch of individual documents. Like, to me, Sam suggested it. I've used it before. We all kind of thought we would use it. We kind of all agreed we'd try it, and it just disappeared. The thing with the newsletter was a really good case in point of why things don't happen. I think that's a GCC we task, something that's legitimate that we could all talk about and contribute to. And I would like to get into the deconstruction of why that didn't work, not to put blame on anybody, but just to see where the process broke down and how we could have done that better. Because I was quite triggered by that process for a couple of different reasons, and I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, I'll go. I actually know that Glenn has his hand up, but if we really want to cover it, we might want to invite Stacy into that conversation, because she was very clear on why she felt there were difficulties with that. And she had conversations with me about that. But if we really want to discuss it as a GCC phenomenon, we should really invite Stacy in. That's my suggestion. Glenn?
Okay, yeah. So I'll try to follow up on the RFC idea. I'm interested to see if this fits into the framework that Josh described. So I'm still very interested in this conversation we had about truth, which I think we only scratched the surface. So there was a document created, and I put that document into, I always forget it. I have to learn that name. What's that? Sulip, yeah. But I see that it's not like an independent thread in Sulip. I had to find it there. So in a sense, that document is done. And in a sense, it's at a very early stage. You know, so what I would like is for others to give feedback on the document RFC style, just as you discussed. We could do it in Trello, but then I would love if Colin sent a link, because the reason I stopped using it was actually somehow I didn't find it. So if you could find, if we could all get an invite, I mean, that could be place. We could do it in Sulip. We can do another document. Doesn't really matter, as long as we have at least one document where we have this for everyone to add whatever they want to add. So, you know, my idea is I have this document about truth. This document, okay, let me explain. So basically the contents of this document are various statements that come from all of us about things we believe to be true. So the idea is, if we collect truths that are quite solid from all the different people in the room, and we find a way to formulate those truths, then maybe that can be a very strong foundation for creating also a vision in the future of what's possible. So that's basically the project that I'm very interested in. If we collect what people really believe to be true or even know to be true, then there might actually turn out to be a lot of things that we all already agree on. And if that can be, you know, put into a document in a way that's clear and everybody's pretty happy about it, you know, that's something very interesting that we can build on, because maybe there can be a bridge from solid facts, you know, something we really know for sure, and build from that and into what are the possibilities in the future, what are like completely reimagined social systems and so on. And that's when we get into the really imaginative stuff. So the thing that I invite everybody to do is, I can share that document as it stands now. It's pretty simple. It's not very advanced. Wherever you want, Trello, many places. And I invite suggestions for things to add to it. Or if you like, you have a suggestion for reformulating some of the points or adding something to it. So I'm interested in if that fits into this model that Josh just described about, you know, to do, done. I mean, obviously this document clearly falls into both of those categories. So this is where, you know, we can play with this to do, done, but obviously this is a work in progress. At the same time, that doesn't mean that we can still use that framework. The main thing here, I think, is just that we have something that we could engage with more of all of us, and we can build on it over time. So, you know, the short reason why the periodical wasn't written was just because it wasn't written. I mean, that's a very simple way of looking at it, but it actually makes some sense. And who wants something to do, just somebody has to do something, and somebody has to add something on it later on. So so if you can send Colin, you can send an invite to Trello, and I'll just have to figure out how to just create a new thread in Zulip. I can call it Truth, whatever. That will already be a collaborative document, because that document is the result of collaboration. And the last thing I wanted to say was, then I would be obviously really interested in having a specific meeting, bond racing meeting, where we go through that document and we really explore the different points. And we can do that in several sessions, and the document can grow and grow gradually. But, you know, grow slowly. It's like we don't have to add all kinds of stuff, but we add something if we really think it's good. And then we have that interaction between the written document and the dynamic meetings where we speak and can ask questions, and it can flow, you know, and you know, so that will be my suggestion for a specific RFC, that I can share this document wherever you want, and you can add whatever you want, and I'm willing to, you know, moderate what at any time a conversation where we can go deeper into it and explore some of the specific points, which again will create a new document, which might create a new conversation, which might create a new document over time. So in the best case scenario, we have a sort of spiral effect towards a greater and greater understanding of certain things that we actually all agree are true. I think that's a strong foundation for many, many things.
I know Jaswinder had his hand up, and I will follow also unless somebody else has.
Well,
Jaswinder?
we started off very clear about what our objective is for today, and here we are 20 minutes to the top of the hour, and we've done exactly what we did 3 years ago, what we did 2 years ago, what we did 1 year ago. There's no good use working, Colin. You're one of the chief protagonists who's doing it. So I propose to keep it simple, short, and sharp formula. Anybody not doing so will be cut off. Glenn, Colin, just to mention two. Alex, you keep repeating the same stuff. And here's the truth for you, if you're really after some truth. Conflict breeds creativity. If it wasn't for conflict, we're sitting here. I'm all for this. Oh, and the other thing I've noticed here is that we're starting on a set of rules on how to get along, and all of a sudden we're putting subjects and topics in there as well that we can leave out or chop off or whatever. It's the same old rigmarole. We're not going to get anywhere. I'm complete.
We will get anywhere if we build the documents.
So
If we
I was
put
gonna
the
go
work
back.
in, we actually will get somewhere. That's the point, Jaswinder. We've been talking about it. We haven't actually done it.
Jaswinder, I have been an evil sorcerer / asshole for 3 years, okay? Because I have allowed lack of agreements to require that we repeat conversations over and over and over and over because we haven't had the foundation to avoid that. I've not unilaterally imposed structure that I knew would get us off of it because I wanted this to be obvious. And only by making it obvious and tiresome will we, possibly get some motivation to get off the dime, which is where I was a long time ago. And I exhibited some frustration around this, but then people sort of tamped me down on that frustration. So I've been trying to be a little bit more politically correct and polite until recently.
This is what I brought up yesterday in a roundabout way, is that those of us who are behind and lagging, and we don't know, and I personally don't know what it is that is not known, how do we correct this? So we have to move forward. We have to, if a person is doing the same routine over and over again, I think we should have a tell or no about that with that person in the middle. And if a person keeps sticking his finger up because he thinks the point he wants to make has more gumph to it than the one that's being presently made, should we give away and give him, say, 2 seconds or 3 seconds to make his point instead of repeating the same old junk?
Are you done?
I leave it open. I'm not a moderator. And I also tend to think that,
Okay.
the point Josh made from the previous week has some jurisdiction. But that's another story. We're still in our nappies and it's full of crap. Complete.
I got some clean nappies here.
Colin?
Oh, Alex, I love your little quips, but they're time wasters. They're not filling anything.
Colin?
Yeah, I get tired of the misunderstanding that we're trying this in a difficult fashion because we're not telling people what to do. And we're not, and there was a retrospective done on me recently between Sam and Graham Stewart. And Graham just didn't get the fact where my frustration was coming from. It's coming from exactly what Sam's talking about. we knew it was going to be difficult. So Sam at the end of the retrospective told him, said, well, we're kind of doing things differently at the GCC. It's not as clear cut as all that. But yeah, if we would have had rules and clear cut things to do, then we wouldn't be in this repetitive type of situation. But the one thing I see that can pull us out of it is having a good definition or visioning, which is what Glenn gets onto, of what it is that we are trying to co-vision and coexist with. Like, what is the topic, like Kayla said, and then we could talk about that topic today.
You're just repeating.
As opposed to rambling,
as opposed to rambling,
Gwinder, please, can we allow Colin to finish?
As opposed to rambling on and on about how it doesn't work. So I'm just pointing out the things that we've already agreed to try that I was quite interested and thought would work.
You said that too.
And a good example came up today about an effort where we were trying to push through a newsletter, and I was late to that meeting. And by the time that I was told 3 times to keep my nose out of it, because somebody else has said that they want to take over the creative endeavor of starting it. So I said, fine.
Wait, let's not.
So what I did
on that, okay?
That's all right. It's not a big forensic. It's just how we use Trello. So I went to Trello in support. I went to Trello in support of this person, whoever it may
Colin,
be.
please stop.
And I put it up there.
We agreed not to discuss this without Stacy here, please.
It's nothing bad about Stacy. The fact is that
well,
it
if we
just
keep
didn't go
discussing
anywhere.
it, you're gonna feel it's bad about you.
No, I'm not. No, not at all. What I'm saying is that we make agreements. We do things.
We haven't made agreements. That's what this is all about.
Actually, we did make an agreement that day that I would keep out of it. You told me, Sam, that Stacy said she was going to do it.
All right, stop. I'm going to go into this now, okay? You wanted to bring this up without Stacy, okay? Stacy agreed.
It's not anything bad. It's about
Colin,
a task.
if you want to interrupt, I'm going to interrupt you, okay?
Sure, but Stacy really has little to do with it.
Please, okay? I'm trying to tell you that when you're trying to bring the subject up.
Update. It's not about repeating the things
more details on this.
Add something to it. It's a complete new update. Thank you, Sam. All yours.
Look, Colin, I've muted you because you've interrupted and I can't say a damn thing. But if you insist on bringing this topic up, my recollection of it is Stacy wanted to do a newsletter. So we encouraged her to do newsletter number 1. You were interested in a newsletter. We encouraged you to do newsletter number 2. Stacy was all enthusiastic to do newsletter number 1, but then she kept getting a lot of guidelines from you about how to do a newsletter. She felt that you were controlling how she wanted to do a newsletter, and that killed her enthusiasm. I am unfairly, potentially speaking for Stacy in this particular circumstance because she's not here, but you're bringing this up and I'm trying to tell you, this is what she told me directly. Okay? So now I'm going to unmute you now.
That's right. I remember that.
It wouldn't have been to stand in her way, first of all. It would have been to help support her. And the things I did that I felt that I was supporting.
Giving a lot of guidance, which she felt was not necessary.
Regardless, it shouldn't stop her from finishing what she wants to do.
We were advising you, Colin, to apply those guidelines to your newsletter.
I didn't have a newsletter.
Why was it necessary
I didn't want a newsletter.
For you to apply those guidelines to
I don't have a newsletter. Excuse me.
But that's the problem, Colin. You didn't want to write a newsletter.
This call was not brought here to discuss the newsletter.
No, it's not. It's to discuss the process of trying to get agreement.
Distracting to talk about the newsletter.
The newsletter is an example, not the topic. It's an example.
You're making it the topic.
No, you're making it a topic. I'm talking about the fact of why it didn't succeed. You're saying because I stopped her from doing it, that's false. By me giving her suggestions isn't stopping her. She could just say, no, thank you. Less suggestions, please. Oh, that guy's noisy. That's fine. I'd rather have people giving me suggestions and not giving me suggestions.
I
The
suggest that
point
you let
was,
other people
the point
speak.
was is that the context was set up.
Colin, I suggest that you let other people speak.
Okay, that's fine. But the
I
context of the
suggest that you
newsletter
let
was
other
never
people
decided.
speak.
Sure. The point
You're
was is that
hogging
as
the
you're
Come on,
cutting into
conversation.
this
fucking shut up,
conversation,
Colin, please. Don't you get it?
Taylor's had a finger
Colin,
up
you say
the
you're
last
open to
3 minutes.
suggestions,
I do
but you're
get that I'm
not.
getting resistance.
Taylor.
Yes.
Taylor, please. Thank you.
This is a really simple suggestion, but I liked what Alex and Glenn were doing when you guys were talking too much. They're going like this.
Speed it up.
And
Speed
it's
it up.
kind of a cool
Get
way
it.
to say, get to the point. Come on, get to the point.
The point was is that it failed. And why did it fail?
Because you and Stacy didn't write the
That's
newsletter.
not the point.
There was
I'm
no
here.
agreement
Colin,
between me and
I
Stacy.
know.
There was no
Nobody
agreement.
wrote it because nobody wanted to write it. That's why it wasn't written.
Excuse me.
It's actually pretty simple.
Excuse me.
Nobody wrote it. That's why it wasn't
Hey,
written.
guys. Wait. This
Now.
whole business of the newsletter, I think is
All we
defocusing.
want is the
Defocusing.
better framework for today on a attitudinal rules about getting along. Keep it short, sharp, simple. Simple is the word. If somebody has a project, and they want help or they don't want help, they get along with it, and they wanted to record it, whether it be Trello or Google Charts or whatever they want to do. Let's have some choices in there. Let's not be too strict. Let's not interfere. Let's not go telling people what they can and they can't talk about. But it has to be in the context. Keep it there, focused. Not one person makes a point and the other one takes a hump or tries to interrupt. I didn't mean that. I didn't say that. We're not
It's all
in our
documented.
teens. We're not in our teens. And look at Colin. Look how het up he is. Relax,
No.
man.
It's
Don't take
all
it personally.
recorded. It's all
What?
recorded, Jazz. It's all recorded. So we can do a retrospective. It's not just hearsay.
What for?
To figure out why the Trello board doesn't work.
I got an idea on that.
We're onto a lot of different topics. We are completely defocused.
You're doing it again. You're
We're
losing
completely
focus.
defocused now. I would like to invite people to have an optional round of checkouts because it's close to the top of the hour, okay? And have other Zoom sessions that actually do follow later today. And to introduce new topics now, I think would just require that the conversation go on for much longer. So I'm inviting people to do checkouts, and I'm inviting people to not respond to checkouts and to keep it relatively short. Can we do that?
Yeah, my checkout. When we do check-ins, we give food to others to talk about something or other. Today it was something called Thanksgiving. I kept out of it. Waste of time. Check-ins should be something quite simple. Hello, I'm here. Everything's good or not good. I have a problem, not have a problem. I need help, I don't need help. Basically, hello, how are you? It's fine. I'm fine, you're fine. Or I broke my leg. Or you could say, Sam, how's your gout coming along? Entirely good. And the other point is, 3 years later, gentlemen and one lady, you know who you are, you know what you're doing, you accuse others of doing the same junk. I suggest you stand in front of the mirror, totally naked, and look at yourselves and ask yourself, am I the one who's holding this group back? Am I the one who's wasted umpteen hours on the same rubbish? Of the same, it's not my fault. I was trying to help. I'm complete.
Josh?
Thank you for that. And thank you everyone for your patience, because this takes a lot of patience. I mean, let's just thank everyone for being here, being present, being patient. And the energy is definitely not flowing today, but it will be flowing next week or a week after that. And my checkout is, as far as I've heard, agreements means two people have to agree on something. That's quite difficult, let alone 3, 5, 7, etc. So I would like to stop the craziness of asking for agreements. And it's not what we do, it's how we do it. So it's not what we've created, how did we share what we created, and did everyone see that? And whether it be a document in text or a conversation verbally, are we listening to each other and can we hear each other? That's the thing that I'm trying to say. And I think it was missed earlier, and I'll try to bring it up another week. But the idea of we are going to make an agreement starts with the individual person saying, here is the agreement I have made, and then being able to share that so everyone can see the I. And if we have an I for everyone, then that becomes the we. But when we're missing certain people in that, or if something is missing from that list, we only see some of the picture, not the whole picture. And I think what creates the we is the individuals saying, I am done with a clear, concise, simple thing that I agree on. And if you can look through the whole thing, then that becomes the we. And I think that's where we've been stuck, is we keep saying, here's what I want to do. What do we want to do? But there is not one place where we can see everything that the I had put down. And all I'm suggesting is that we communicate clearly and separate what needs to be done to what is being done. So it's not a to-do list, it's a doing list. And then the only way we could ever see if the doing list was done is if it gets moved over to a it's done list. And then we can make a request for comment. How do you make a request for comment on something that should be done or is in the process of doing until it's actually done where you can comment on it? That's where I think we've been stuck, is we're in the middle of doing and we keep commenting on the doing so it never gets done. And I hope that's clear, is if we don't signal that it's from the doing, we're all here doing and being, we're humans being, but we're humans who have said, this is the best I can do as of right now. What do you think? But if we're still on, wait, don't tell me what you think because I'm still doing it, then it just loops and cycles and we're constantly in the cycling pattern. So at least some point signal, this is the best I can do for now. What do you think? And then allow it to go back through a process. And I believe that's the agile process. I believe that's what we were talking about the other day, is iterations, runs, and sprints, and helping each other's individual efforts by adding on to generative, having fun, making it a good time. Hey, you did a really good job, but I think I can improve on that and do it less wrong. And then we're all feeling like, hey, you know what? 3 people contributed to that, but I didn't. And then at the end of the meeting, someone can say, you know what? I wish I would have contributed. I don't have to ask anyone if I can contribute. I can just do it on my own and add on to that and generatively create something even better. And the thing that I'm talking about that gets lost is a document called agreements. Just one document. Sam says, I am done with all the agreements I can possibly make, because he's asked for 3 years of all different agreements. I've seen some documents you've created, Sam, with like 800 agreements. That's the best you can do. Has every individual here on this call made their own document of agreements, generating off of that list that Sam has created with the group? And can you add on to something that's better than that? I challenge everyone in this room to do better than what Sam has done in barn raising individually, and then show that back and signal that to the group and generate more positivity and generate more creativity, inspiration, and generate simplicity so that document is not 800 long, but maybe distill it down to 2 or 3 agreements out of the 800. And then we can complete and be done and move on. With that, I'm complete. Thank you guys for being patient and listening to me.
Good. Yeah, I'll do my checkout and I'll follow up on that.
You're muted, Glenn.
Okay, yeah. The agreement that I put on the chat is we bring an attitude of friendliness, openness, and curiosity to allow something generative to happen. So that's something I would propose as an agreement. I agree to it as a general attitude. I think that it's a very important attitude. It will make a big difference if you agree to have that mindset. And also, I'm going to share this truth document in the GCC barn racing messenger thread. So I'm just going to begin there. And if Colin sends me an invite to the Trello, I can put it there. So that's also a request for comment. And as Josh just said, that's the best I could do until now. I don't know if that's, I mean, I'm sure I can do more, but it's a beginning. So I think at least it's good enough to get out of that loop. So then, you know, everyone's welcome to add whatever they want to that. And then already, you know, we're actually getting things done. And instead of talking about what we like to get things done. So because I've noticed that there is this, you know, meta trap where instead of just doing it, we're just endlessly talking about whether we should do it or how we should do it, etc. So you kind of fall into a meta perspective instead of just, you know, putting something out, putting out specific suggestion for how it could be improved or expanded upon, etc. And when you're doing that, you know, you're already rolling. So, so I'm gonna share that just in the, you know, barn racing regulars thread, because we're all in there anyway. And then, you know, anyone can copy that, put it anywhere you want, add anything you want. And remember, that's a document that's actually based on things we've already shared ourselves. So it has been co-created already. So yeah, so, you know, and obviously, as mentioned, I would be really interested in continuing going really deep into this and just have some kind of special barn racing meeting where we put up a screen share of some of the points, and we just add on things that we consider to be possible improvements. And if we just actually do that, then we're not talking about doing it. We're building a document. We're building a body of understanding, and that's something very specific. So so yeah, I think that's basically that's my contribution to this issue. I think you know, we have to be patient because some of these issues are very complex. So, you know, maybe like, for example, the newsletter, it's like you have to begin somewhere, and that's also a challenge. But I'll begin with that and end with that. So thank you very much. Always a joy to be
Just to
together.
observe, I think Jaswinder was trying to say, please make it short. I think that's how I interpret what Jaswinder is trying to do.
Can I do a
Okay.
checkout?
Go ahead, Alex.
Just a quick checkout. I'm making a commitment, my own personal commitment to the community to always make an agreement, to follow up on that agreement and to honour my commitment. Over.
Kayla.
I'll check out. I'll check in with Stacy first, but I'd like to do a newsletter. I love to write, and this would actually be pretty fun. You know, people have their reasons, but writing has always been kind of fun And I just do it. So I'll just check in with her if it's okay for me to write the first newsletter, because I know it was her idea, and then I'll write it. And then I'll do a one pass, because I'm still on Facebook Messenger, to see what you guys think before it's actually published to whatever social media stuff there is out there. And yeah, that's, happy to see everybody. Happy to actually engage instead of multitask as much. And thank you.
Okay, I'll check out. First, let me address this one point about meta. I will plead guilty. I have been in too many groups where all we do is do, and practice, what we know how to do. It is my experiment here to talk about how we do what we do so that we can bring in, hopefully, different dynamics about inclusion, about efficacy, about co-emergence, about proper visioning, about mycelial effects, about network effects, about titles and whether we need titles. I've been all about that for 3 years. And I believe, to attenuate my guilt, I've been very explicit about this. So I'm not here to provide clean water to all 8 billion people on the earth, okay? I can only carry so many gallons, okay? I'm not here to grow all the food for 8 billion people on the planet. I'm not here to provide technology to all 8 billion people on the planet. I'm trying to figure out whether we can understand collaboration in a different way so we don't keep propagating the matriarchal, hierarchical, power-based, dictum-based, centralized control method of whatever the bleep we think we're doing. That's why I ask the questions I ask. It's not about, are you going to get this done or that done? It's a great question, but that's not the question I'm asking. What I'm asking is, how do we together figure out what needs to be done? How do we together figure out how we can coexist without killing each other? How do we together figure out whether we can actually make our way off this planet, or are we just going to go extinct? So to me, everybody else is doing, but until we understand these questions and have some reasonable models and behavior guidelines and new practices, we're just going to keep doing what everybody else is doing. That's how I talk to Doug when I talk about us being different. We have to do it differently while we be different. And the appreciation that I have for us as individuals is strong. We come here as individuals saying, I'm doing this, you're doing that, let me find out what you're doing. And oh, by the way, I am doing stuff. I am posting videos. I am posting documents. I am listing who's there. I am doing the transcripts. I am trying to figure out, what we can actually add to mutual brains. I'm trying to figure out where we can share documents. And hundreds of documents exist for the hundreds of sessions that are here. And very few people have bothered to go and add whatever they've thought to those documents. So if you want to talk about appreciating collaboration, how do we do it? I will gladly go to wherever you're putting your stuff, but right now I've got this place that's easy for everybody to add to, and it's not actually getting a lot of traction. Now, if you don't like the way it is, tell me you don't like it. We can make it look different. But there is a document that corresponds to every single one of these sessions, and it lists what I can put in there. But obviously, that's only a fraction of what we could put in there if we chose to value that document. So we as individuals are doing things to some degree or other. We don't yet have an emerging vision of what we as a GCC thing is. And I've been trying to figure out, in order to get there, we need to understand our terms. In order to get there, we need to be able to make agreements. In order to make agreements, we have to figure out whether or not we actually want to make agreements and how we hold ourselves to agreements without the negative punitive shit. So in my mind, there is a very clear arc to these conversations in barn raising that may or may not, and is probably not visible to others. But I find it curious that people will come week after week and say, we're just repeating the same old conversations, without even asking me, hey, Sam, how come you're just having the same old conversation? Ask. It is different. In my mind, it is very different. There are subtleties and nuances that are being tried here, which if you're not paying attention, yeah, it's gonna look the same. And I actually appreciate every single one of you, because every single one of you, with the questions you ask, with the energy you bring, with the interest you bring, allow me to understand why I think the way I do and how I can change that. And how I can propose doing differently, if not actually better. And then hopefully then share that. Got precious little to share because I know precious little. But little by little, I'm trying to do it. So to me, these are not the same conversations week after week. They're very, very different. And every single question anyone has asked, I've got a response to, but if I gave that response, I would be monopolizing this entire session. So I will probably stop here now. Thank you for listening. Over. We're in a checkout round, right? So we're not inviting other responses at the moment because I do have to prepare for another Zoom session that I'm going to.
Bye. I have to go. Bye.
I just want to say bye-bye also. See you later.
Heiner, rather
I'm
than
listening.
bye-bye, you give like 15 seconds of what you think you heard?
Well, déjà vu, we had that before, but I think it's also important and neuralgic that we build on it. So barn raising is a dangerous metaphor, but I like it, and I like to see you all.
Yeah, I'll check out then. So yeah, I think that one of the topics that came up about having an agreement to use a tool that we could all follow, that I liked. It was going down the agile road. And I hope people understand that it is frustrating. As Sam says, it's frustrating. You do have to repeat yourself and add nuance. So Heiner's right. It's deja vu, but we're trying to get smarter as we go. But if we don't do retrospectives on what failed and why it failed, then we're probably not going to learn that much. That said, Trello was a public board, as is Facebook, and whatever is there is meant to be public. So I'm still kind of really confused on that whole newsletter thing. And I like the fact that Kayla said, I will do that and I will check with Stacy, because that's great. Although I don't think Stacy probably cares much about it at this point, because that's the reply I got from her when I asked what was going on. I never agreed to do the second newsletter. Stacy agreed to do the first one. And I remember Glenn was there, and Glenn and I were talking back and forth about things we could do. And what happened is that it all got shut down because Sam had said Stacy's going to run with this one. So that's fine. That's all documented. So all I did was document that on Trello. What failed in my mind is there was no bell that went up in 2 weeks after nothing happened. Like no ding. Stacy apparently contacted Sam. I don't know. There's all kinds of stuff we didn't learn. And The point is I'm not bringing up Stacy because of Stacy. She was just involved, that's all. Sam was involved, Glenn was involved, a lot of us were involved. The point is that it's on Trello. It didn't work. Why didn't it work? And what was each person's assumptions? What did each person hear? Because it could be different than what the other person heard. And from talking with Sam, I don't think we're on the same page either. But I do remember being shut down, and all I could do was document the process. So that's what I did. I documented it on Trello. Didn't tell people what to do. And it's still there. And yes, Glenn, I'll be very happy to help you in with Trello. I'd be interested if Sam is onto Zulip now or Trello, or if we can have an agreement together that if we're going to be focused on something and filter through something, is it going to be Trello? Because I thought we already agreed to that a year and a half ago. So it's not hard to use. You know, we've made so many agreements. It's very frustrating. So the details of what happened with the newsletter is interesting, but what's more interesting is it was such an important project to the group and it failed, especially when so many people were interested. And then Kayla comes after a year and a half, says, oh, I'll do it. Well, that would be a beautiful thing. Maybe she has the skill to do that, but you know, people will easily be able to work with Kayla to add stuff to it. I wouldn't be surprised at all. That was not the agreement that I was asked to make. And in fact, I didn't make any agreements. Stacy and Sam made an agreement that she would do the first one. That's the agreement I remember. So it's, you know, it's kind of all confusing, but it comes into here through the topic of newsletter, people involved. Why did it fail? And I thought we already agreed to that, which is kind of the whole theme of what we talked about today. And it's interesting to see that we're taking different perspectives on what we should be named and what we should be doing. So maybe it's time for round two. I don't know, but I think a retrospective on some things could really help, and it doesn't seem to ever happen. So we just kind of move on, water under the bridge, until someone a year and a half later says, oh, I'll do it. And like, I remember Glenn and I were really excited about doing some stuff, and Glenn has a skill for writing too. So I would suggest Kayla gets together with him. Last couple of weeks ago, I suggested something about a collaboration between Alex and Yogan.
Suggestion land again, leave it out.
Yeah. By the
Alex
way,
and Yogan.
I
I'd like to know next time what happened with that.
I have to go, but if you send me that just a link to Trello, because I've gotten a new computer. So
Okay.
yeah. So if you just send me an invite, I think that would be great.
Sure,
Anyway,
sure, I'll do that.
I gotta go, guys. Thank you.
See you
Yeah.
later.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Glenn.
Thanks, Glenn. Thanks to all you guys. Has everybody had a chance to check out then?
Yeah, I'd like to say a very big thank you for calling to be here. And last week, I had big hopes after last week, Colin. We had a good Sunday. We did a lot of digging, you and I and Doug. But you seem to revert. You go to sleep and you go back to default. Is that my fault? How can we help you overcome this blockage of yours?
Good question.
I want an answer. I don't want a flip good question. I want to know. What can
Blockage
I
and what
do
question?
that I'm not doing?
I don't think this is the place. I don't think this is the place for it. But Jazz, I've said many times I have a difficult
This is
talking
why
to you.
we're here, so that others may come too. We're not here
Your
to hate you, we're not here
offer of
to criticize.
mentorship is
We're here to see what
Thank
is it
you.
that Colin is, what is it that he wants.
I want
How
people to
can
do what
we
they
help
say
him?
they're doing. That's it.
What?
People hold their word. I want you to do what you say you're going to do. And Sam wants the same thing. That's what we all
I'm
want.
doing
People
what
to
I
have the
say I want to do.
responsibility.
But you're in the way.
Responsibility.
You
Yeah.
are in the way of yourself and others. That's what I'm getting at. When you
And what-
start doing what
first
you're
of all-
doing, are you aware that you're doing what you're doing?
By bringing up the fact that we need retrospectives, I don't think I'm in
I
anybody's
will
way.
be specific. When
Be
you start
specific.
suggesting that somebody has said, I want to do the newsletter, and you start suggesting when that person's already gone, that person gets along and talk to another person on how to do the newsletter, you're making suggestions that are superfluous. They're not required.
Actually, I would have liked to make suggestions during the official meeting with everybody there to agree, and I was told not to. So all I did was go to Trello.
No.
and say,
Just
"Stacey's
now
gonna do number one."
today, just
Go
now
look at it.
today, you suggested that Kayla talk with Glenn.
I say Kayla can do it without talking to anybody.
Why are you saying that?
I'm saying Glenn is very interested at the time when we talked about
Why
it,
are you saying that?
because it's true and he's got a skill in that
It
area.
may be true. Is it your place to say that? Are you saying to Glenn in a roundabout way?
I think it is. I
don't
think it is my place to suggest
you're
people.
aware that you are interested in that you should do this.
Yeah, I think it is my place to make suggestions if I see them to help people. If they don't want to take
All
it,
right. In that case, you are allowing yourself to be open to the same treatment.
I think that's
Do
called
not
birth.
do unto others that which you don't want done to yourself.
Jazz, I've never made up any rules for what people can do and what they
You
can't
make
do.
up rules or not, society has already made up rules, and we are adding to those just for this group.
What's your point?
My point
What
is
is it that
just
I'm
that.
missing?
Understand that the rules that you're operating under and the additions to that we make and are specific to this group are in operation and are being amended. So if you say something that contradicts or contravenes those rules, you are opening a chasm for yourself. So far,
Name one. Name one.
So far, everybody's been very lenient and let you off. And I've
Name
been
one.
pointing that out to you all along. From today,
Name something
every
that I understand in
every
somebody's way.
time you make a misdemeanor, I will be stopping you.
Look, the only misdemeanors I make is trying to be understood. That's it. Not to
Good.
tell people what to do.
I will help you be understood by keeping you short, sharp, and simple.
I don't think you can keep me understood if you want to simplify the ideas beyond recognition. No, I don't think so. And they're pretty simple to begin with.
I'm not asking you to think. I'm telling you I'm going to think for you.
Okay, so what did I say today? What did I say today that triggered you? Because all I asked
I'm
for
not
was
repeating
retrospective.
it. That's what I'm saying. Your memory is no good. I've already
That's not
explained to you
Look,
what
can I
what
insert
you said
one
about Kayla and
observation?
Glenn.
Go
Can I
ahead,
just
Sam.
interrupt and do one observation? You guys are both interrupting each other and you're both very
Yes.
difficult to follow. Okay. So I'm checking out right now because the way this is going is not easy to follow for a third party. Okay.
Right, and I don't enjoy it either.
Then why are you here if you're not enjoying it?
Because I don't pull the switch on your seat, okay?
You are the most argumentative person I've ever come across. You have never, ever admitted to a single error when it's pointed out to you that it was done just a few minutes ago. You still don't say, oh, did I do that? I didn't mean to do that.
I didn't hear any accusation. I just heard general ad hominems. Make a claim, go for it. A claim. Not an
There's
ad
something
hominem.
lacking in your empathy systems.
Not at all. My frustration system's peaking though.
What is your frustration?
The fact that you're a difficult person to communicate with. And Sam
What do
as
you want
well at times.
What do you want to communicate?
Well, I wanted to do a retrospective on why we make agreements and don't stick to them and what happens in a case of one of the.
Who didn't stick to the agreement? You're one of the biggest persons who doesn't stick to the agreement. And you're
Which
the one.
agreement? Name one. Name one.
Okay. Why were you suggesting earlier today, if we go back, way back to when you first spoke in a big chunk,
Yes.
suggesting that we talk about certain subjects and that you thought certain subjects shouldn't be talked about and you didn't like them.
Particularly?
I'm not going to give you particulars. I want you to jog your own memory.
Well, I think, in my opinion, I've got a few things that protect us all here, not just me.
Hold on. So
Yeah.
we need your protection.
No, I think we need to solidify some of our micro agreements and understandings.
Right? And what are they?
Yeah. Well, one of them I suggested was that because I was causing some issues with my idea of us not respecting our time and just talking about anything and going on grandstands, I actually highlighted people who I felt were doing a great thing, like Kayla, for example, when she says, I would like to talk about the telenola. Would you guys be interested? Not, let me tell you about the telenola because you guys all need to understand.
What's
And
that
then
got to
go
do with anything that has happened today?
consent. It was consent. She was looking for consent and trying to, instead of trying to.
How would you describe consent as in a dictionary term?
Well, in that case, I would say before she decided to give us all a lecture, she wanted to know, and before she mansplained to us all what it was, she wanted to have our interest for our time and attention. And that's all I really asked for.
Doesn't make any kind of sense to me, any of that, Colin. Honestly,
well, for example,
Kayla
if you wanted to get into a topic right now about, as you've done before, about the beginning of the universe, you could have said, would anybody like to have a conversation about the beginning of the universe? Because I think it applies a lot right here. Instead of just going into it.
Hold on.
Just assuming that we all want to have that conversation.
Hold on. You're doing something that's very, very annoying to everybody.
Okay, what's that, Jazz?
We're talking about one thing, and you've taken this to
Respect
another
of time. Respect of time is what we're talking about. Consent of
now
taking
that's
someone's
another
time.
thing. See, you keep changing it.
That's the same one, always. Where have you been?
So I will say this to you. Without telling me or asking me, you have gone from one topic to another, and yet you don't want anybody else to say to you.
That's not true at all. I asked you to come up with an instance of where I caused an issue where I was making rules or trying to block people.
Alex.
Not happening.
Alex, in the last 2-3 minutes, how many times has Colin changed the topic?
I think the topic that you're on
Which is it?
A thread running through the conversation.
What is the topic?
Well, it's not the beginning of the universe.
No, that was the one I said would waste our time. What is the topic that we're talking about?
Did he change the topic? That's the question. The answer is
what
yes.
What is the topic?
Maybe
you can't know if I changed it.
The topic focusing on micro agreements.
Right. Thank you.
Yes.
That's all I wanted to know.
And,
so, no, listen. If you want to seriously move ahead, you've really got to take a very deep look at yourself or let somebody else do it for you.
The thing that we're doing here, Jazz, is that when I am changing the topic in your eyes, what I'm doing is I am trying to become more concise to what we're actually talking about. From micro agreements
I believe
to an
you.
example.
I believe you, and that's fine with me.
Hold on.
That's fine with me.
Alex is right, it's about micro agreements, but that's like 5 layers up in the conversation.
Goodbye.
Okay. We're talking about why.
It's a lot of fucking crap, Colin. You're not prepared to move one iota in any direction. And that
what
whatever
direction?
you're saying.
Talking generalities. You talk in generalities. You're not talking specific. I'm talking specific. You say I'm changing the topic. I need specifics.
I'm talking specifically that if you say something.
That's not specific.
Listen. If you bend a rule to suit yourself, that you have
what
agreed.
Rule?
All the rules that are operative. This
I don't
is where you're getting it wrong. If you don't want a topic being introduced without Colin being asked, can I talk about this topic?
All of us.
And you do the same. You barge straight into, you were talking about this topic without asking me that you could talk about it. Or that.
No.
But I'll give you specific
bring it up.
today.
You can bring up a topic. There's nothing wrong with that.
Religion is an allowable subject on our agreements. And you
Oh,
said,
is that your trigger? Is that what your trigger is? Religion?
no,
You're
I'm
getting a little
giving
more
you a
specific.
fucking example. Listen to this whole
You're getting
example.
closer.
You don't like that. And there's other things you said you don't
I
like.
don't like abuse of power. Yes, I don't
I'm
like that.
coming back to the same thing. If Colin doesn't like it, who is he protecting?
No, the thing is that I'm saying if we're going to have a long conversation about a particular religion, shouldn't we ask for the consent of the people in the
Why a
conversation?
particular religion? Why not religion in generally? Why can't we have a long conversation about humanism or atheism or agnosticism?
So this is where I realized that you don't understand what I'm saying. Recently, I said that I would like to bring a proposal to the group where we say that the GCC, to protect everybody, is secular. What does secular mean to you?
You want everybody to be secular. Is the world secular?
Yes.
The whole world is
world is.
secular.
My world is. And
Good.
every respectable
No.
world is.
That's your world. I've just realized that you want everybody to come to your world. It ain't gonna happen. This is
No,
the
that's not
world
true.
in general, and the world
Hold
in
on.
general operates on the rules that they have already put forward. If
What
you
does
want
secular
everybody
mean?
else to operate on
Hold on. You're going too far. Secular means we're all protected, all religions or lack of religion. It means that I don't get to say what you just said I do. It means I disagree with what you just said. That means
How
that
are we going to learn about religion if we don't talk about it?
we
Or how we
can.
feel about things?
We can.
How?
I didn't say we don't talk about it. The thing is that we don't assume that we are a particular religion, because the opposite of secular is to come in and say, well, this is the way things are. I'm going to tell you, and the reason why I know is because of my religion. Now
Where are you going with this?
That's a little bit of grandstanding. If somebody says, would you like to know about Hinduism?
I don't want to know about grandstanding. I want to know.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
World, no, listen, it's very simple. How is the world operating?
Secular means that we're all allowed to bring whatever we want.
No. You're fucking well interrupting with secular. I'm talking about actuality. How is the world actually operating? What is it that can make the world a better place for everybody that they would agree to? Not what Colin says, everybody go secular. You know, the Chinese tried that.
Well, no. I don't think you understand secular. I really don't. Secular means that no one religion gets to say, I know what's happening. Everybody gets to say what's happening.
That's kind of.
That means that I'll give you an example of a non-secular place. England, it's under the Church of England. Okay? Rome, or the city with the Vatican City. I don't know how secular that is. I don't think that's very secular.
Hold on.
United States is secular.
No. Hold on.
Canada is secular.
No. You made a statement and then you're giving me your version of what it means, and not the version.
But now, because England realizes that it can't enforce it's what's it called? Church of England. It can't enforce that. Now it has to respect that there could be mosques around and there can be other religions around. That's secular. So England has now become secular and allowing there to be mosques.
I think you're fucked up, seriously.
No, secular means that we're all protected to practice our own religions. We're all protected to have our freedom of speech.
That's not secular.
The problem I have isn't about the freedom of speech. It's about the feeding people sandwiches and asking for their consent in a conversation.
It's not feeding sandwiches. We're talking about religion, that people can go to a school, a high school, a university, and learn about. And if they want to pursue it further to the higher levels of spirituality, they're free to do so and to talk to each other and to anybody else about it.
Right. And if a group
Okay.
gets together,
And
and they have all
I'll
kinds,
give you something else. The laws, nearly all the laws that are operative in the world today, apart from a very few countries, and even those I suspect have been put in place by one particular religion, and that's Christianity. And that has caused many problems. Hold on. Now, that is not secularism.
it's not today either.
That is contamination.
It's not
So
today.
if you say to me that if you want secularism, I would say it's already contaminated. It's too late. We have to look at those errors which religion has put in, a particular religion for that matter.
Well,
And
it's
another one
idealistic.
is trying to, and if we don't talk about it in the open, they are going to stay there and probably multiply.
So my vision would be this. Let's say Jazz has 2 hours to talk about some topic, and he can only get out about 10 to 20 minutes during a meeting, and he's very unsatisfied because there's much more to discuss. And you've just managed to confuse more people than to help them understand, because there is such more to understand. So you say, look, I don't want to disrespect this topic. I would like to have, if everybody would like to hear about this topic that I have, I'd very much like to discuss it. And then we might say, yeah, why don't you come on next week and you moderate and you discuss that topic? It could be about anything under the sun, as long as it's legal.
Yeah, so.
But just to try to push our big ideas that we all have during the barn raising meeting, I think is disrespectful, not only to you and your idea, but to everybody else.
You've never done that. You never pushed your agenda.
Oh, we're all guilty of it. I didn't say we're idealistic,
Right.
but we could work better. And I'm saying Trello was an example of that, and it just pushed off.
So if you want to work better, why do you not do it?
Well, I think as Sam alluded to it, that we're too loose and goosey.
No. Why doesn't Colin do what he's asking others
I
to
put
do?
a lot into Trello.
No.
I've done it.
You're doing it again. You have accused me of coming into the barn raising and bringing up topics that you don't like and that you weren't privy to, that I was going to bring them up.
No,
and
I didn't say didn't like.
You have admitted that you have done the same, and we all do that.
It has nothing to do with what I like. It has to do with the respect we give the topic and the time we give it.
So if you want to use the word respect, that's fine.
Yes.
But Colin does that all the time as well.
Hey, look, I didn't say I was perfect, but
so
I definitely am
aware. Back and tell me, why don't you behave like you want others to behave?
Okay, let's just do a little retrospective here, Jazz. Why am I here, and what have I been pushing of mine? Nothing. I'm here because of conversation.
Okay, then we'll go back to a rule 0. Every time Colin pushes something, I'm going to be on your back.
Well, I wish you would, and I wish you'd vote on it.
Every time you make, I said this earlier, I'll repeat it now, and it's my last statement for today. With you, you make one error, wherever it is, whichever program you're on, I will be on you.
No. If I make a claim, you can do that. Anyway, looks like I got roped into the idiot corral again today, so whatever. If you're still listening, Heiner, talk to you later. I guess Sam is gone as well. So I could just wait here, I guess.